Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are going to just give a minute to get the rest of the participants in here before we get started. Thank you for joining us, either super early on the West Coast like Susan, or just starting your day here in the Midwest where I am in Minneapolis. So thank you for joining us. We'll just give another couple seconds to get some participants in here. So thank you so much for being here. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Molly Bennett, and welcome to the Designed for Learning Back to School Preview live event. We're really excited to have a great lineup of sessions for you today to give you a highlight of some of our awesome sessions, some of our awesome presenters, and some of the work that we could do with you in your school district. So without too much of an introduction, we have only 45 minutes this morning with Susan. And so I'm going to have her take it away. Susan comes to us from California in the Fresno area. She is our guru on primary young learners. And she is going to share today a session about assessing young learners. Many of you have multiple different tools or different ways that you assess these young learners. And so Susan's going to give us a variety of ideas. Throughout this session, Susan's going to give you an experience as to what this could look like with your staff. She's also going to sort of pull out a couple times and just think about our thinking and sort of share about why this is important in our age of COVID, of back to school, of using blended learning, meaning that we're integrating both digital and face-to-face learning with students and kind of capitalizing on what we've learned through this distance, remote, COVID learning time, and taking forward the things that are really impactful and useful for students. So I am going to let Susan take it away, and I will come back towards the end too. And if you have any questions, please feel free to answer in the chat or ask them in the chat. And Susan is going to try to model some engagement here as well, in which she might ask you something in the chat or to go somewhere. So we will let Susan take it away. Thanks, Susan, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Molly, and hello, everyone. Good morning. It is definitely bright and early here in California, but I am so glad to be here today to talk about assessment with my favorite crowd, and that's our young learners. A little bit about me. My name is Susan Stewart. I'm an instructional technology teacher on special assignment. I'm a tech coach from Central California, but I also like to share that I do hail from the land of sunshine and rainbows. I am a former kindergarten and second grade teacher. And we know as administrators, especially, like kindergarten teachers are a special breed, right? When you're talking about professional learning, I know that as you hire people to lead your teachers or just help your teachers grow, those kindergarten teachers are really like, they can call you out. They're like, have you spent time on the kindergarten floor, right? So as I'm talking about young learners today, know that I come from a land of experience. I've spent a lot of time in elementary classrooms and specifically primary classrooms, because when it comes to sharing a lot of the things that we've been going through, there is this idea that our young learners, they're too small for that. They can't do that. But we have learned in the past 18 months that our littlest learners can do so much when we put the tools in their hands and give them opportunities to show us what they know. So again, just a quick outline of what our plan is today. We're going to be talking about assessment. We'll start by defining assessment. What does that look like? We'll continue on and talk about just evaluating some digital tools. Maybe these are some tools that you have in place already, or maybe things that you've heard about, just talking to fellow administrators. And then of course, in step 3, we're going to be talking about working smarter, not harder. How do we put some of these things in place for our teachers that are ready to use, right? Not a lot of extra work on their plates, because we know that one thing we cannot do is waste a teacher's time. Teacher's time is so valuable, and we want to make sure that we're providing resources for our teachers that are just very streamlined and easy to use. So that's kind of our plan for today. Again, if you have those questions, we've got some experts hanging out in the chat to help you answer them, and I'll try to jump in there as well. So I want to start with this big question, and we're going to go through one of two tools. I'm going to probably decide on the fly which one we're going to use, but I want to talk about assessment. What is that? What does that mean to you? What are some tools you're currently using for assessment? And sometimes we'll use a tool like Padlet. In a Padlet, it is a blank canvas. It's very easy for young learners simply because it doesn't require a lot of extra logins. You can use a Padlet on pretty much any device. So a tool like Padlet is one tool we might use to have learners share their answers. And we can do that in a physical environment, right? In person, in class, as well as in a virtual learning space. Padlet is one example of a tool that we could use for that. Let me show you what that looks like. And then I'm going to show you a new one that's very similar to this. And the reason why I'm kind of going two different ways here, it's like when I want to put a question out to my kiddos, and again, in person or in a virtual learning space, I just want to give them a place to drop an answer. And why I like using a tool like Padlet is because everyone gets to see each other's responses. We can see what is being shared. So I would provide this link to my learners. Now, tools like Padlet, maybe you've heard of one called Jamboard, maybe you've heard of other tools where we can share learning. They're a lot of fun, but what I want to do today, I'm going to get a little bit wacky, and we're going to try something that's so new and exciting for a lot of teachers. Padlet's fun that we've been there, done that. Jamboard, is very new if you're integrated in the Google Suite. But let's go into a tool. This is a new tool called Whiteboard.fi. Now, the question I have for you, here's the question. How do you define assessment? That's the question I'm going to have you answer. So let me model really quick what your teachers would do to do this with their learners. I'm just going to go to that space, whiteboard.fi, whiteboard.fi. This is a great tool. It's part of the Kahoot family. It's freemium, right? Free, but wait, there's more if you get their subscription. But I'm going to go ahead and just create one. Again, when we're talking about easy setup, right there, I just created the name of a class, and now I've got this temporary whiteboard that my learners can share their learning on. So if I wanted them to draw a triangle or spell a word, I'm giving everybody like a virtual whiteboard, like the one they might hold up in class, we're going to get here. So let me go ahead and demonstrate that for you. Here I have a whiteboard. In a moment, you're going to have this same whiteboard screen in front of you. And if you wanted, you could grab a pen tool and write a response. If you had some kind of touchscreen device in front of you, you could use this text tool right here. There's an A where you can type your response. Okay. I'm thinking of the whiteboards that students can hold up in class, very similar. So if you wanted to type your response, you could say assessment is, right? So you could type your response. Or if you're someone who answers better in memes and GIFs and clip art, right? Feel free to show what you know in a way that makes the most sense for you. So I'm going to provide this link for you, and I'm going to put it over in the chat, but know that your teachers might put this in a Google Classroom or wherever they share links with learners. So what's going to happen right now is you are going to click on that link in the chat. So click on the link, and for you, it's going to ask a name. So go ahead if you want to put your first name or maybe your initials, and you'll be able to jump in there. And remember, the question that I've posed is this: how do you define assessment? I'll give you about a minute and a half. Feel free to push the buttons, right? Sometimes when you have a new tool in front of you, you want to just try it out. There's some emoji there, and I'll tell you the young learners love those emoji. So just take a moment or two, and let's take a look at that whiteboard.fi. So go ahead and check that out. How do you define assessment? Remember, we are going to answer that question. How do you define assessment? Oh, and I see some answers come in. Oh, this is exciting. How do you define assessment? There we go. Awesome. Assessment is how we measure student learning. Thank you so much for sharing that answer. I like it. Assessment. So remember, in order to jump in, there we go. Checking in to see what students know. Love it. Very cool. See a couple more people jumping in. And remember, if you haven't already done so, there's a link in the chat, and I bet that Molly can share that again. In case you just came in, I see some friends just popped in. Click on the link, add your name. And then from there, there we go. There we go. Oh, there we go. Measuring learning. Okay, yep, assessment is measuring learning. I love it. Very cool. How do you define assessment? So hopefully you've had a chance to jump in. Oh, more people jumping in. I love it. opportunity to see what they know and what they've learned. Right? So what's fun about this is that you do have some choice there, right? And our young learners can have success if they're working on iPads, if they're working on Chromebooks, and the fact that they can click on some of those emoji. Maybe we're talking about, simple CVC words. Like if I were thinking of assessing young learners with their decoding skills, or maybe with their blending, I can have them write on these whiteboards. So it's very similar to something we might do in person, but we could do it here in a virtual space. Now, what I like about this is they have that choice of different tools too. They're awesome. Anything that measures student success. Assessment is the bridge between teaching and learning. Oh, that's a good one. I like it. All righty, cool. So what I love about a tool like this, and we're talking about defining assessment, is it does, and there's not just one size fits all answer right here. I didn't ask you to choose between some bubbles, really just a different way. So if you haven't seen that tool, whiteboard.fi, know that it's a great one, free to use. There are, of course, some subscriptions you could get there, but I love to just take an opportunity to show a different way to do something that we might have, we've done a variety of ways in person. We could do this virtually, right? Not one size fits all. I love it. Yes, thanks for sharing that. So just a little bit more, and we're talking about assessment. I'm going to go on and get nerdy for a second, okay? When we're talking about assessment, I sometimes think that with learners of, all ages, but specifically when we're talking about primary learners, really wanting to make sure that we have some definitions in place when it comes to the types of assessment. There's formative assessment, summative assessment. In the early years, we do a lot of performance assessments, or sometimes we'll even do some of those progress monitoring and ongoing assessments. So when we're talking about different types of assessment, one of the greatest just analogies I've heard about trying to define that is this video by Dylan William. And I won't play it for you, but I want to know that you have it available to you. But he really does this great job of illustrating assessment. He likens it to, a pilot and a plane. We know that when a pilot goes up in the air and flies for a while, they don't just set it and forget it. There might be autopilots, but there's constantly readings being taken, right? Measurement of progress along the way. They don't just go up, fly east for a certain amount of time and land. Same thing with teaching. We can't just start the chapter, drive forward for 2 weeks, and then give the assessment. The idea of that analogy is that, those constant readings, constant measurements are so important. By the time I give my final assessment or my, summative assessment, I probably have a good idea of how my students are going to perform, simply because I've been doing those formative assessments along the way. Formative assessment gives me the most bang for my buck, right? When I teach, I can look right now, how are we doing? And it gives me that opportunity to reteach on the fly. So I just want to make sure, as we're talking assessment, really specifically talking formative assessment, it is two different things here. Formative assessment's periodic. It measures practice, doesn't always necessarily talk about grades. Those summative assessments, right, the end of unit assessments, are a bigger picture thing. And when I'm talking to teachers and I'm trying to get my teachers to really get on board with the idea of ongoing assessment, I really try to focus on formative assessment. This is something that the primary teachers really understand. Formative assessment is a little bit like a game of Candyland. Formative assessment is what you do all the way, but just like Candyland, sometimes you get to a point and you got to go all the way back to the beginning, right? So formative and summative assessments, they both have a role in education, and especially in the early years, because it is that ongoing assessment. We're going to continue on and really think about that. When I see something like this, and this image comes from my friends at Seesaw, we know a kindergarten student, this isn't the kind of assessment that really makes sense for them. Asking young learners to read text and fill in bubbles isn't going to be a very valid measure of student success. This is one of my favorite, illustrations of this. When we talk about assessing what kiddos know, especially what little ones know, it's like, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same test, go climb that tree, right? We know that even our young learners, we're not necessarily cut out to do things or show our learning the exact same way. So as we're going through here, I really want to make sure, here's the big question: how do we ensure that all students can express their learning, that we have a good way for all learners to show us what they know? So let's talk assessment in the early years. Oftentimes, your primary teachers do one-on-one assessments. They'll put something in front of the kiddos and ask them to write, measure, explain, point out. So we like to use the tool Seesaw. If you haven't had a chance to check out Seesaw yet, it's a great way for young learners to capture their learning with voice and photo and a few other ways as well. So let's say we're assessing patterns. Traditionally, I might give the students a piece of paper where they mark the pattern. In this example, I can say, build the pattern, friend. And, I can ask my friend to build a pattern, and then they can take a picture of it. And then I can have that assessment data. I think of the benefits for that for teachers right now. A tool like Seesaw, instead of having to do the one-on-one assessment and go through every student, students can do this in their own time during their asynchronous time. I say that word asynchronous. In kindergarten, we've been doing asynchronous learning for years. We call it centers, right? So when students are able to do some of those assessments during their centers or stations or small group instruction time, teachers save time. Right? They're not having to call students up one at a time. They can go ahead and have students do this. So a tool like Seesaw is great for assessing learning because students can capture their learning with some of those powerful tools. Another reason why I love Seesaw for assessment is because it offers those opportunities of choice. If we're talking patterns again, a tool like Seesaw lets them build it, physically build it with something, markers, you're doing an AB pattern. They can use some of the Seesaw integrated tools. There's some shape tools within the system, or they can use a pen and just draw it out. So when we're talking about those little ones, those teeny tinies, and showing what they know, we really have this great opportunity to embed choice as well. So we have tools that are age appropriate. We have choice embedded. I love the idea of that. Now, let's talk about Seesaw. I'll be honest, that's my daughter. And in the last year of virtual learning, remote learning, whatever you called it in your schools, I saw some of this. I saw this tool being used because teachers, when we first found ourselves in pandemic era teaching, they're like, how do I get the learning from over there to over here? And I saw a lot of, let's hold up our worksheet and take a picture. And that's what we did to connect with our learners in the beginning. But as I look at this and I think about moving forward, right, the new normal, the next normals of education, and I think of a tool like Seesaw that has those powerful drawing and camera tools, I look at these and I say, what opportunities are being missed for our learners in the class? So let's talk about how we could take a tool like Seesaw to the next level. How can we measure early learner success using some of those great tools in Seesaw? I'm going to play a couple of quick samples. These are student samples. And I really want you to put on that lens of what are we measuring here? What are we measuring during this? And I want to add a little bit of information about both of these kiddos, and especially the first one. That's my friend Caesar, and he's a language learner. So as you're talking about, what are we looking for here? What's the skill? What's in place? Keep in mind, this is Caesar, a language learner. Let's go ahead and play Caesar's example here. And Molly, if you can go ahead and just give me a quick thumbs up as I go to make sure the audio is good on this.
3 cracks and 2 octopus makes 5 creatures in the sea.
So here we go. We have Caesar, and he's using Seesaw at the next level, right? We're not just taking a picture of something. We're talking about number bonds. We're talking about, making those, make a 5. And I see that Caesar had multiple opportunities to show his learning here. I could see how he dragged some interactive pieces into place to build that picture model. I see that he used the number bonds there to create that, 2, 3 and 2 make 5. He created the sentence, the equation across the bottom. But most importantly, I got to hear Caesar explain it. He said 3 cracks, right, his language there, and 2 octopus make 5 creatures in the sea. Now, I heard a friend of Caesar's in the background say 3 + 2 is 5, right? And so when I listen to that sample and I listen to Caesar there, and I'm keeping in mind that I've got a language learner here, I have a really clear image of something more, his language development. So I'm not just assessing what Caesar knows about number bonds, right? I have that, he said 3 cracks and 2 octopus makes 5. He didn't say animals or things, he said creatures. And then he followed it up with that preposition, in the sea. So what is being measured here, what is being assessed is so much more than, what we could show on, say, a worksheet where they were doing number bonds or adding some, to 5, really taking it to the next level. As I look at a tool like Seesaw and I think about how did my teachers use Seesaw when we were just trying to figure it out, and now we're trying to look at some of those next normals, a tool like Seesaw is a really great way for kiddos to have those multiple ways to show what they know, the multiple ways to express their learning. I bet that if Caesar had to write write a story problem about his thing, he probably would have said 3 + 2 is 5, 3 crabs, 2 octopus in all. But because he was using his voice, he stretched himself, because I know a lot of kids, when they're trying to write out words they don't know, creatures might have come to that and just paused. He wouldn't have had the literacy skills to write the word, so probably would have skipped over or maybe brought down his vocabulary a little bit. That powerful microphone in the Seesaw tool helps us assess learning a variety of ways. And that's where I want to kind of stop and talk about it. Seesaw. It's one tool. We've already talked about a few. We tried the whiteboard. We know there's Padlet. We were looking at Seesaw now. And as teachers are making those important decisions, coming back into the classroom, talking about next normals, when is technology the right tool? When is maybe a more traditional way about going, through a task, evaluating, assessing, whatever we're doing? When is technology the right tool? And I want to make sure teachers know why. Why would I choose that digital tool? And for me, these 4 words are really important in this conversation. As I'm selecting technology, whether it be for assessment or creativity, I ask myself, when I look at a task, how I've done it in the past, and I examine how I could do this in this next normal, because I have all these great new skills that I've learned about how to use technology in the classroom. I wonder, is this more efficient somehow? Could I choose the digital tool and have it be more efficient for me? Does it save me time? Does it save me grading later? Is it more effective, right? Is it giving my students additional practice in a way that maybe they wouldn't have been able to have done in a more analog or non-digital version? I wonder if when I use technology, am I somehow making this activity or this assessment more equitable, right? Am I now providing access to learners who maybe wouldn't have had the success, because technology allows me to have tools that support, maybe it's reading something aloud to them. Again, maybe it's letting them read it aloud to the screen. I don't know about you, but I haven't found many worksheets that will capture the student's voice as they're trying to fill it out, right? So the record button in technology really does open some doors and oftentimes make these assessments more equitable. And then the piece about engagement. Kids love being able to get the bells and the whistles and the ding, ding, ding that happens when we use technology. So when they're doing assessments online, we know that our kiddos are oftentimes more engaged. So when teachers are making that choice, traditional, how I've always done it, or maybe these newfangled technological skills that I've picked up during pandemic era teaching, really that evaluation piece is so important. But I try to do this lens and I try to lead my teachers through that. Is the digital tool always the right tool? Not necessarily. Does it fit one of these ideas? Then let's go with the digital one. Why would I choose the digital? Maybe it is because about saving the paper resources. If I don't have to run that assessment off and I'm able to get that self-grading or instant feedback to the learners, then maybe the digital assessment is the right tool. If I have easy access to data, I can run a quick report. I don't have to spend my time grading, and I can see where my learners' needs are and then address those needs right away. That's why I might choose a digital assessment over a more traditional one. When we're talking about, learners, is this somehow more collaborative? I know that when I choose digital, usually the resources are more current. I got a few worksheets in my file cabinet that are not very current, but I still love them. But I know that oftentimes those digital tools are the more current versions of things. And then of course, we know that when we engage our young learners in technology, we are preparing them with skills beyond just our content, right? They're getting familiar with working in a digital environment. And there's a lot of value to that as well. When I think about it being a second grade teacher and I think, what skills do I want my learners to come in? There's skills in reading I want them to have. By the time they get to second grade, I hope some early foundations have been set in reading. I think about math. I hope they can do these things. Now, as a second grade teacher, I think about what digital skills should I hope my young learners have when they get to me? So why would I choose a a digital assessment in kindergarten? Well, it's just another foundation, right? If they have some skills along the way, we're preparing them to have academic success all the way through. So, assessing with Seesaw, that's one thing we can do. Something like an oral counting assessment. Remember, we went back to that idea of them doing those one-on-one assessments, a teacher having to go through all 24 students and listening to them count by fives, right? It's time. So I can use Seesaw to have students just read that aloud, 5, 10, 15, 20. Great ways I can have them do some of those assessments, saving up teacher time, more efficient there. But I also think about things like sight word assessments, CVC words. I love when a student can record this list of words and then hear themselves back right away, right? When students hear their own voice, because they're already like, oh, can I do it again? I can do better. And so that challenge of being able to continue on. All of these, letter identification, sight words, great way not just to assess their learning, but have them continue to practice and increase their fluency there. Speaking of fluency assessments are another thing we can do in Seesaw that really does give our learners that opportunity to use the tools at that maximum, right? When I think of listening to every student read, I'll be honest, I wish I could hear every student read every day, but it's not the reality in class. I don't get to hear every kiddo every day. When I use something like Seesaw to assess my young learners' fluency, I might provide a passage there. And I'll tell you that one thing that's great about Seesaw is there a library of great resources, just like the two on the screen here, already ready, right? Teachers everywhere have shared this content, so your teachers would be able to just type in first grade fluency, and so many free, ready to use resources are there in their activity library. And then the learners can go in and read the words. We can listen to them pronounce the words. We can listen to their rate, their prosody. We can listen to them as they read. I know that sometimes when I'm giving fluency assessments in the classroom, okay, ready, sweetheart, I want you to read for 1 minute. Ready, set, go. Hold on 1 second. What do you need? Okay, hold on. I'm sorry, can you say that again, right? We know that assessing in early childhood, that was one-on-one assessments, that's really hard. So when students are able to hit record, I can listen to that in a time when I'm not going to be interrupted by the other, squirrely monkeys in the room. So I really do appreciate the ability to do fluency assessments with Seesaw. And continuing on, I know Seesaw has some additional features that allows me to track and monitor my students' progress within standards. Seesaw Skills is one feature that is available in the Seesaw for Schools versions that really does help us when we're trying to monitor growth over time. So as we continue on, I really want to make sure, we're talking about how do we help teachers access assessment resources. I mentioned the activity library in Seesaw, right? How do we make sure that they have access to some of this good stuff without having to start from scratch and spend a lot of their valuable time preparing assessment resources? Another tool, I like to talk about helps me solve this problem. If you've got these, I've got them too, right? I've got lots of them. I've tens of thousands, I'll be honest, tens of thousands in my career of these have gone through my classroom until I learned, right, know better, do better, a better way. But why do we do fluency assessments? Well, we want to make sure that they have that fact fluency. We know that the automaticity that comes with them having quick access to this, 10 plus 2 is 12, right? Because as they progress on, remember we talked about where they're going, some of these foundations we want to have. So this is something we've been doing forever. Can we do better? Absolutely. I go to a tool like Quizzes. And if you haven't checked this one out, another great freemium resource, free in the sense that there's plenty of stuff you can do without a license. You can use their basic teacher plan, great resources. But wait, there's more if you pay, right? There's some additional features you can get there. And a tool like Quizzes allows me to take those basic addition facts, right? And I'm thinking of like, okay, everybody, here's your paper, on your mark, get set, go. Okay, here goes, wait for everybody to do it. Then I collect it and I go through the workflow there. Okay, so I had to make the copies. I had to distribute the copies. I had to take the time in class to do this. Now that I've collected those, I have to sit and score them, right? So there's just that effectiveness and the efficiency of it. I wonder if a tool like Quizzes, where students have something that pops up in front of them, it blings if they get the right answer, it's a race, there's a score, lots of fun things going along with it. And then that immediate data, right? That immediate data right there that tells me how my students are progressing in this skill. So again, we're talking about traditional versus a digital. Even in in-person learning, this has some benefits simply because of those things we talked about. Efficiency, immediate data, all of that is available for me when I switch to a tool like this. I'd love to take a quick quiz together. And I was kind of going back and forth about, do we do something meaty and administrative, or do we something fun? We're going to have a little bit of fun. And I'm going to go over to this website again. Quiz is freemium. And I'm going to see that there is a library and a place where I can explore. So your teachers can go to this explore space and type in the name of a topic, a skill, a standard that they're working on. And remember, thousands and thousands and thousands of resources available, ready to go. I have some choices here. I can choose either a live quiz, which is what we'll do right now, but I love that there's some options for asynchronous learning here. Remember, asynchronous, I think, centers and stations, not necessarily, at home, but I could also do these for some assessment or just formative assessment at home. Let me click that button. There's lots of buttons along the way here, so you can go in and customize how you want your game to be run. If you've ever played Kahoot, I'll tell you this is very similar, and there's a few features that are a little bit different. I'm going to hit continue here, and you see that I have this. Now, with early childhood education, I could have my learners say joinmyquiz.com and type in a code, but there's a lot there for young learners, and that's 15 minutes in kindergarten. So I love the fact that I can either get this link and push it wherever I give it to my learners, or more importantly, you see right here, that Google Classroom icon. If you're using Google Classroom or some other LMS, you can grab that link and post it to that place. I'm going to go ahead, since we are here in a Zoom, I can go ahead and put the link over in the chat. I'm going to have you go ahead and join in with me there. Remember, we are going to play a live quizzes, and what should happen is you should be able to type in your name. If you have used a quizzes before, probably pretty familiar. There we go. We've got some friends jumping in. Awesome possum. And remember, we're going to play this quick quiz together. Awesome. Here we go. Awesome, awesome. Let's keep going. And let's do this. Go ahead and get it going, and I will start our game and go. We're going to take a quick quiz together, and we're going to run this, and you'll see that, a few things happen here. You're able to, if you're playing along, you're able to see the questions come up. And if you haven't had a chance to click on link, don't worry, you can still jump in and join us. There's that ability to jump in as you go. You'll see some questions. And I, as the teacher on the teacher side, I'm able to see that progress as we continue on. I'm able to see how my students are progressing through the learning. So I see a couple people have jumped in. Awesome. It's okay if you jumped in late. You can still click on that link in the chat. It'll take you over to quizzes where you can have a little bit of fun. Awesome. And I see some teachers getting competitive. Sometimes when I do this with teachers and even administrators, they'll start saying, well, what happens if they get it wrong and purposely get it wrong? But I know some of you out there are so competitive that you're like, nope, 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 gotta be the fastest, the quickest. So awesome. Really quick, simple way to assess that simple skill of CVC words. So hopefully I'll give you just a couple more seconds, maybe about 15 or 20 more seconds to try out this tool, quizzes. Oh, I see definitely someone in the lead there. Love it. If you had a chance, click on the link in the chat. If you haven't jumped in yet, there's still a little bit of time. And of course, the students are getting some immediate feedback. The students are being able to know right away if they got it right or wrong. So we're able to practice a variety of simple skills. When you're talking about young learners, this is really basic, right? There aren't a lot of extra bells and whistles. They click on the link, open it up, and it's very intuitive for even our teeny tinies. All right. Oh, we got someone else jumped in. I'll give you a couple more seconds. We're going to wrap up it soon, but I want to make sure. Oh, we got a couple more friends that jumped in. So we're going to go ahead and keep going because I want those of you who just jumped in to have a chance to answer one or two questions. Oh, fun. Oh, there we go. You see, just a really basic tool. Now, if you have used Kahoot before, you know that Kahoots get a little bit wacky in class. It's a lot of energy and excitement. I do love that Quizzes does bring it a little bit more to their screen, and they're able to see the answers in front of them. There's still the excitement of, the race and the, did I get the right answer? What's my score? Oh, 5 more seconds. I'm going to wrap this one up. Let me go ahead and end that. Sorry for those of you who just jumped in, but we're going to go ahead and continue on. But I can end this at any time. But the most important thing for me is that I get some data. So as we continue on, I'm going to go ahead and let I want to show you my teacher screen there. It gives me a quick snapshot. So it just shows the top 3 here, but let me go ahead and I see here, come on, too many screens. There we go. So you can see I have the score here, but I can go through and see how my learners.
Actually, Susan, we just see the quizzes.
Oh, you know,
the slide.
Thank you for getting, there we go. How's that?
That's better. Thank you.
So you see, I just wanted to point out the back end there of the teacher view, what the teacher sees, and that's that immediate data. So if there's a question here, when I'm giving my assessment and I see right away, ooh, not so good here. I know because some of you just had a chance to jump in at the last minute and didn't answer all these questions, but in class, I'd be able to stop and say, what about question 3 went wrong? Was that, you know, did I not explain it well? Do I need to reteach this? It's that instant ability for me to use this formative assessment data to adjust my teaching right there on the fly, to be able to make sure that I'm making the most of this teaching, right? So I'm able to teach, I'm able to assess with that formative version, and then I can jump in. So even the little ones can have success with this tool there. And looking at it later, I can go back and I can see data that looks like this. I can really do a deep item analysis of the assessment and decide what was the struggle here. So I look at this first one and I notice, so the correct answer was bed, and I noticed a lot of my students did that. But I wonder, looking at the data, right, taking a really deep look at this data, why, you know, what about that? Well, I noticed that, well, a lot of them chose bad, which means we got the initial consonant, right? I've got that skill, but something about the middle vowel, that's a reteach opportunity right there. So the fact that I have this data, I didn't flip through 30 different worksheets to find that out. The tool, the digital tool, gave me this immediate data. So I know right away where my next steps are. The formative assessment gives me next steps, and I can see some things I need to reteach. Okay, here, yep, we got it. Awesome. So I really think about that. If you want to check out some similar tools to quizzes, there's 3 great ones here. In these, there's not a right answer, right? If the kids are engaged, if it's a good time with young learners, you want to make sure that you have a variety of tools, but not too many, right? We don't want too many tools simply because it does get overwhelming. So you introduce a few at a time, or maybe just one, get them opportunities to be successful. But also, if you're always doing the same thing, I know sometimes I think, oh goodness, not another Kahoot, right? Have you ever had that feeling? So being, you know, as a teacher, we want lots of tools in our bag of tricks, and especially in our assessments, we want to have a variety of things we can use to keep those kiddos engaged. So here we go. Last one for us here. And I really want to make sure, how can those digital tools really capture learning? We want that great, rich measure of what our little learners are getting out of their instruction, right? How can those digital tools capture learning? And again, teachers have more digital skills right now than th've had ever. You've even, you know, the kindergarten teacher who said, oh, not in kindergarten, they need to be hands-on. Oh, in kindergarten, and that's true. There's so much truth to the importance of hands-on play, the importance of interaction. And we know that there's a lot of strength and positive that comes out of giving students experiences to show what they know digitally. You know, we talked about Caesar and Seesaw, and I know that there are some kids who may be a little hesitant to share their learning out loud to their peers, but we can give them a tool or put a camera in front of them. Hello, it's a TikTok world, right? You put a camera in front of them and they suddenly have this vocabulary and this enthusiasm to share their learning. So let's talk Flipgrid. Flipgrid, if you haven't had a chance to see this in the classrooms at your school, is another tool that captures video. It does a lot more than that. But when we're talking about those assessments, counting by 5s, reading the set of sight words, fluency passages, listening for intonation in reading, whatever our purpose is for listening to what our students have to say, Flipgrid captures that for us. It's another simple tool that allows us to capture some of that authentic performance data. I love Flipgrid because something like a math assessment, I can actually build a small little blended learning lesson here where I say, watch this video, and here's some of the instruction. Flipgrid's great because it has this thing called immersive reader that will actually read the instructions aloud. I know in my schools, my primary teachers often say, oh, there's too many words on that page. My young learners aren't going to have success here. I love Flipgrid because they have that immersive reader that will read the instructions aloud to them. So what I have here is, let's watch this video about Jack Hartman. And Jack Hartman, oh, he's the best. We're going to practice counting to 100. They read the instructions, and their challenge now, their performance assessment here is they're going to click record and they're going to count to 100. So really simple tool. Again, I'm thinking about the time saved on the teacher's part, right? Where we're not having to listen to students one at a time during class time. I can work on that, maybe during a prep, or maybe when I'm sitting at home with my coffee in my hand, I can flip through these and just measure my student success at a time that's not in person. So really great tool for things like that. Now, when it comes to Flipgrid, it's a lot of fun too. You'll see a lot of silly stickers, and when we're measuring technology, we said that engagement is a huge, determiner there. Do I want to do this because it's more engaging for kiddos? Well, if they get to pick a sticker after they've read their fluency passage, then yes, they're going to be more engaged in there. So I love, offering Flipgrid to learners. When we did find ourselves in that emergency remote learning, when we had learning at home, I love that Flipgrid was just a lens into learning from far away. So that was just a great tool that we were able to use both in person to capture and measure learning, but also if we found ourselves in a situation where kids were learning from home, or even if we want to continue engaging the home learning environment through home activities, we can still continue using those digital tools to do that. So, whether it's using modeling, whether it's the whiteboard that's embedded in Flipgrid, we're able to capture learning and measure learning a variety of ways. Just like we could find fluency passages in Seesaw, Flipgrid also has something they call the Discovery Library, full of fluency passages that students can read as well. So, whatever your assessment that you're trying to do, whatever the purpose is for assessment, just keeping in mind that there's a ton of these ready to use. Your teachers will not have to make this stuff up. They can do a quick search for their learning outcome, what's our goal, what's our standard, and they can find resources that other teachers have already created and shared. Whether it's book talks, book reports, or just a new spin on the book commercial. I love that Flipgrid has so many resources ready for teachers to use. I'm going to pop a link, and if you're interested in trying this out, I'm just going to give you this to work on later. If you haven't had a chance to use a Flipgrid yet, I'm going to go ahead and just put a link so it's there for you. So what I would do if I were in the classroom, and if you might have seen this with teachers, I would share the link. So I want to share this to learners, and I love within Flipgrid that I can just copy a link to you right now. But of course, I have all of these sharing tools depending on what you use. I can share this home to parents if they want to do some of that, like I said, that homeschool connection. I can, share it to my learners via Google Classroom if that's the tool I use. However, I want to get this to kiddos. So if you haven't had a chance to try this, I'm just going to leave this open for you. Know that you can jump in and practice, counting by twos, right? Fun little quick way that you could do that. Flipgrid's got a very simple interface, so our young learners can just jump in. When they get in and they're connected, they hit the button that says add response, and suddenly they're recording just like that. And they can record the video, just one button. There we go, 3, 2, 1. I can count by twos, 2, 4, 6, 8. You get the idea here. Of course, we mentioned all the fun stickers and fun things we can go beyond that. Kids are engaged, right? They're really into this. And just a couple of clicks, next, and I have submitted this. So I can have my teachers capture learning a variety of ways using Flipgrid as a tool. So if you want to check that out, that's there for you. And just know, great tools. Now, a lot of people ask me about my cursor. I didn't think that this big giant cursor was important until I started teaching online. I want to share that resource to you because primary teachers, especially, having something big and exciting. I use the extension custom cursor for Chrome. And yeah, My name is Susan again, and I do really believe that our youngest learners can do a lot. Follow some of the things I share under the hashtag K2Can2. Follow me on the internet too at Tech Coach Susan. I'm Susan. I'm a tech coach, and I'm not super creative there. So awesome. And thank you so much for being here today, for really just stopping to look at some of the ways our young learners can show what they know. Various assessments, right? Not just those bubble tests, using some of these digital tools that our teachers have really acquired in the last 18 months of pandemic era teaching.
Thank you so much, Susan, for that. I'm just going to steal your screen from you as well. Thank you so much. It was just awesome to just pick apart each of those, see a real life assessment, but then also talk a little bit about the why. So we'd love to know from those of you what resonates with you, what is something that you're thinking about or that Susan kind of made you think about. I just love those E's. I love those E words of, effective, efficient, equitable, and engaging. And those are just 4 words that I think we could carry with us into a lot of situations, whether it's, what we're doing and what's working or what we're going to do next. So I really think that was awesome. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then I also just wanted to let participants know that we would love for you to stay connected with us. And so as we are doing this, we have a little poll that we are going to put together, if I can find my Zoom screen to do that. And we are going to just see if you want to stay connected for conversations with Designed for Learning. We have awesome people like Susan that do a lot of these sessions. And then we have, she jammed about 3 to 4 sessions in this 45 minutes. So we take that apart and we digest it and we go one by one. We can do literacy, we can do math, all those sorts of things. And then also, if you're interested in staying connected as well, we are going to provide a free asynchronous activity that you could do with your teachers to get started about best practices in blended learning. So that is something that we would like for you to see. So you have a little poll that's going to launch. And so just answer yes if you are interested in receiving those free resources. It's kind of facilitator's guide, which is going to be great. So the best practices in blended learning. And then also just thank you so much for coming. I just also want to let you know that we have a great lineup of speakers today. And so Susan is just the beginning. Thank you so much. You have a full professional development day with your teachers today. So we really appreciate that. Next up, we're going to have Emma Pass talk about engaging all learners in blended model. Then we're going to have Eric Cross talk about STEM for all learners, which really kind of matches the equitable learning that you talked about too, and culturally responsive teaching within including STEM resources. So that'll be fun. And then on a district leader level, Ryan Crone, who's the superintendent, is going to be talking about making the shift towards a learner-centered ecosystem. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you join us for other sessions. And Susan, thank you and best of luck today with your teachers. Thanks, everyone.